G'day and welcome to another edition of the Aussie Ideas Man. That's me in the middle there. I'm going to do another video, but there won't be any moving video. I'm providing these three pictures just to show where I went almost as I do another road trip in the BYD 803. The last road trip I did was almost 6,000 kilometres from Brisbane down to Melbourne and then across to Adelaide and back the same way. This time I've done a trip down to Wollongong, and the reason for this road trip, I probably would never have done another road trip, but I thought I'll suffer it one more time just to see if there's been any improvements in this part of the highway. So this is the story. No, I won't start with a story. I'll just explain the three pictures that you get to stare at all the time I'm telling you about how the road trip went in an EV. First picture on the left is looking north just as you go under the Seaforth Bridge. That long line above is the road, that's the horizontal line, is the road that approaches the Sea Cliff Bridge, which is almost as far south as Wollongong. It's the scenic road on the way to Wollongong. Now that's the road, but this mess of a road that you see in a vertical plane, the larger part, is just a little bit of old road that you can walk down to get under the bridge. The Sea Cliff Bridge is a bit of a tourist attraction. Nobody usually walks under it, but we did, and this is the way under. It's a bit unusual because that white stuff was some sort of canvas that was laid on the rocks before the bitumen was laid. This is quite some years old now, I think about since 2006. And it has eroded, but anyway, it's still walkable. You wouldn't be able to drive on it. And we walked under the bridge. So that's the first photo. The second or middle photo is of me under the bridge. I've gone past that mottled old road that's eroding away, and I'm on the rocks, the big rocks that are under the big Seaforth Bridge. I keep saying Seaforth, Sea Cliff. And that's me just touching one of the pylons, and you can see the curved part of the bridge itself behind me. And again, that's looking north. Then the third one gives you a little bit more of the perspective of the size of the pylons, because that's my friend who we took down from Brisbane, and he's standing touching a pylon. I've blacked out his face so nobody can recognise him. I don't think he'd want to be recognised, but he's just standing there, and I'm on the pylon just before that one, if you were to be driving south towards Wollongong, and that's facing south. The photo's facing south as the bridge curves around and meets the cliffs again. Those cliffs are blocking off Wollongong in the distance. In any case, they're the pictures. Three pictures of when we stopped at the Sea Cliff Bridge. From that southern end on the third picture, on the cliffs themselves, you have tourist parking where you can leave the car and walk the bridge in its entirety, which we did. We walked northwards in a downhill direction down the bridge to this first picture where you can see the road start to come off the main road. And I'm talking about the crappy road, just starts to come off the main road. Well, that's taken a long time, but anyway, that's all I'm going to give you when it comes to the trip as far as scenery goes. We had a good time. There were four of us. Our intention was to, go to the Everything Electric show in Sydney. So we spent one night in Sydney just because the BYD can't get down to Wollongong in a day. Then the next morning we did this drive, the scenic drive to Wollongong, where we stopped off at this Sea Cliff Bridge and many other places, beautiful, beautiful places. The drive along that scenic drive is gorgeous and is some of the most or prettiest countryside you will see anywhere in the world. And we ended up in Wollongong, stayed on the 13th floor of an apartment in the centre of Wollongong for 2 nights, where we drove out and just enjoyed being tourists. The main, I guess, attraction that we drove to was down further south at Kiama, But down there's a natural attraction called the Blowhole, the Kiama Blowhole. And that was lovely to see, as was just looking around Kiama and other places on the southern side. We did this because last year, when we went to the Fully Charged show, which this year has been renamed the Everything Electric, and I've already made a video yesterday about that. We did this because last year we flew down to Newcastle, rented a car, stayed at Gosford, and holidayed for about 5 days on the Central Coast. So this time we decided to take some friends who were going on a cruise on the Saturday, and we took them to experience what an EV road trip is like, and also to look at everything electric, where they could see more about electric vehicles. So this time, instead of holidaying on the Central Coast, we went south to Wollongong and just had a shorter holiday looking around there. So much for the holidaying. My main reason for making this video is to see how much the section of highway that we revisited after only a matter of about 4 months has improved. And the sad thing is, it hasn't. So this is from memory. I'm not reading a thing. I'm just ranting. From memory, this is how it went, and this is what I think. We left at 3:45 a.m. to drive down to Sydney first, hoping that we could make it before dark. As we crossed the Queensland-New South Wales border, we lost an hour because of daylight saving in New South Wales. Our first stop was at Ballina, where we stopped last time. And when we stopped last time, there were 3 charges, the slowest one being 50 kilowatt hours, and they all worked. On this trip, just a few months later, both the faster chargers were broken. And fortunately, there were no cars waiting at that early hour of the morning to charge. So we managed to get the 50 kilowatt hour charger, the only one that was there. So we ate at the nearby McDonald's, we had breakfast, and we didn't waste too much time on that first charge. And on we went. The second stop was supposed to be at the same place just south of Coffs Harbour. But when we looked at our Better Route Planner, I think it was, or some source of checking out what was available, we discovered that the 2 charging ports that we had last used were also broken. So here we go. 2 at Ballina, but fortunately 1 left, and 2 at just south of Coffs Harbour, and none to go to. So I had to use for the first time a BP Pulse charger, which was in Coffs Harbour. So luckily we did have something available to us. What we discovered was that it was a 75 kilowatt hour charger, and there were 2 machines, and we pulled into the left one, and shortly after we pulled into the left one, a Volvo pulled into the right one. And as we looked at the charge rate, it was around 25 kilowatt hours, not 75 kilowatt hours, which is within the speed of the Atto 3, which can do up to 88. And I've had it do up to 88 on faster chargers. In any case, it was pitifully slow, and we had a long, long wait. And we had nothing to do because we'd had breakfast at Ballina. So it was a case of hang around when we really didn't want to hang around. In any case, after more than an hour of charging, we continued on to Port Macquarie. Now, you don't go into Port Macquarie, it's about 5 minutes off the highway, and there is a big service centre on the highway where you can turn to go to Port Macquarie. Last time we went there, it was all broken. All the EV chargers at that service centre were all broken. Months later, we want to go there, and they are still all broken. Fortunately, about a 2-minute drive from there was a new one put up at a new shopping centre, and this was an NRMA set of chargers, and they worked, but we had to spend ages trying to get the NRMA up on our phones. It, for no logical reason, failed, and then on a second try, again failed, and so my wife rang NRMA, and with a bit of help, but mostly just luck, the third time it managed to work. Once again, this was a 50 kilowatt charger, and it took a long time to charge. But by this stage, we could at least have some lunch. There were shops there, and we could have lunch. By this time, we had lost plenty of hours in the day, a real lot of hours. But the main thing was we were just lucky enough to have somewhere to charge, because had that not been there, we could have had the same difficulty I had in my first trip, where I had to be towed on a truck because too many broken charges ate away my range. It's pretty hard remembering back almost 2 weeks, but the next place we went to was another BP Pulse, just north of Raymond Terrace, which is a little north of Newcastle. I decided to stop here rather than go to Gosford because on my last trip, Gosford was all broken. Now, I wasn't going to get towed on a truck again, so I found this BP Pulse a little bit north of Newcastle. The problem here was, once again, it charged far slower than it was supposed to, and it was raining. And even though it wasn't time to eat, we were virtually forced to eat. Then when I got back, I jumped in the cars and stopped the charging session because I didn't need a full charge to get to Liverpool, where we were staying the night. I knew we couldn't make it within the whole day down to Wollongong. And so we stopped and got a motel in Liverpool. But at this particular point, it's raining outside. I've stopped the machine, and then I jump out to disconnect the plug when the machine is telling me to do so. And I'm pulling on the plug, and it would not let go at all. And I was getting wet. So I jumped back in the car and decided I'll have to ring up BP help. And we rang up BP help, and they started saying things like lock and unlock the car doors. So with my inner door buttons, I locked and unlocked the car doors and got out into the rain and tried to pull it out again with no luck. Jumped back in, a bit wetter again, and tried it a few times, kept jumping in and out, no luck. And eventually, this is, you're 10 hours from home and you're sitting in a car in the rain. It's not a good feeling to have your car stuck to a machine. You can't go anywhere. But in any case, out of desperation, and it was just lucky that I thought of it, I got out, stood in the rain, and locked and unlocked my car using my remote control from the outside. Tried it, it didn't work. So in desperation, I tried it again, and the second time, out came the plug, and we were on our way. I'm pretty wet, but at least I could drive the car. Not only was it a slow charge, but there was a lot of time wasted in trying to get the plug out of the car. Next, we get to Liverpool and we set up in a motel it was, and I decided I'd better have some range to get down to Wollongong the next morning. So my friend and I took the car out, and having spent a lot of money on the higher prices that are being charged now, last time I was sticking to anything that my RACQ would give me discounts on. This time I was using providers who didn't give discounts and had higher prices, and so it was a dearer proposition to drive down. But in any case, when I looked at the opportunities to charge from the motel in Liverpool, I found that there was a BP Pulse 7.3 kilometres away or something like that. But then a ChargeFox, one that is a little bit cheaper, was only 9.2 k's away. So I decided we'd go to the ChargeFox one. And this is night time. It's dark by then. This ChargeFox one is in the middle of a shopping centre, and we start charging at, once again, 50 kilowatt hours, fairly slow. I had to be there for quite some time. And we walk away from the car and find ourselves in the middle of some sort of hangout spot for Middle Eastern people. They had their hot cars and they're leaning against them, just chatting and different things. They're sitting at outdoor cafe tables and different things like that. But the whole area, the whole place was just Middle Eastern people. And believe me, my friend and I were a little bit worried for our safety. Now, we were the only two white guys in a huge number of what looked like bored Middle Eastern hoods. We were just out of place, and we felt uncomfortable. So we just kept our eyes to the ground and strolled around, hoping that nothing happened. And I cut down the charging time drastically just to get back in the car and go on. The next charge was in Wollongong, and I forget the details about that one, but it was nothing good. I believe we ate again. I remember eating. Unfortunately, that was fairly close to the charger. The charge after that was the next day in Wollongong, and this particular occasion, no, there was one charge that I had to make on the way back from Kiama before the next one in Wollongong. And I found some NRMA charges in Shellharbour, and it was hard to find them, but once I'd gone down into an underground shopping centre car park, they were there. They were not lit up on their screens, and I eventually found that that's because they were both broken. Couldn't use them. But in any case, I did some mucking around because I tried to see if I could wake them up with the app and discovered that I had no internet, and so I couldn't use the app while standing in front of the chargers. And apparently this is the matter for many chargers built in Australia. They put them in underground shopping car parks where nobody has internet reception, so their apps can't work. I had to go up into the open air, which meant walking up the ramp for cars, which was the quickest way. So I walked up the ramp, went up in the open air, started to use the app, then went down and found that it didn't wake up the chargers anyway and discovered they were broken. So on we went. We went further north, still in Shellharbour, but we found another charger there. Can't remember what the hassles were there, but it's another case of we ate while waiting, and the wait was very long. On average, not even counting the times we mucked around, you would be doing 2 hours of driving and an hour of charging, which is absolutely ridiculous. Another charger we came across, and I probably won't go on with the details of it, where and what charges we had to go through, but another one that we came across, it had 4 charging points on 2 machines, but the 2 machines backed onto walls. So what there was only 2 parking bays to use 4 charging points. There was a Tesla and myself in the charging points, and a third car turned up and couldn't get at a plug because there was nowhere to park. They had built a place where you could charge 4 cars and only made it possible by only having 2 parking spaces on one side. Had they just moved the chargers to a clearer location, and it only had to be metres away, they could have had parking bays either side of the 2 machines so that there'd be an opportunity for 4 cars to use the 4 plugs. This is how dumb it is. This is really dumb. The thing that irks me is that EV zealots go on about how this isn't too bad. But I'm a person who deals in facts, and I accept the reality of life, whether it be good or bad. And I have driven ICE cars for more than 50 years. I have not come across any of these nonsensical situations. They all happen with EVs, and they're all stupid, and nobody wants them. I don't know how EV zealots can actually make excuses for them. You go into any service station with an ICE car and you've got enough parking spaces for all of the Bowsers that are there. And you never have a Bowser that won't remove the nozzle. There's never been a case where somebody goes, oh, I've put the nozzle in and filled up with fuel and I can't take the nozzle out. I discovered not only did it happen once with BP Pulse, it happened 3 times with BP Pulse. Fortunately, I knew what to do the second and third time. But for some strange reason, and I don't know whether BYD is complicit in its engineering or whether it's totally what happens to everybody that goes to BP Pulse, I don't know. I don't care to find out. It just shouldn't happen. You should have car locked up and have to play silly games to unlock it. I also think because of the number of both new machines that don't work, machines 4 months ago that were broken and are still broken, and machines that you get signs on them saying these machines are not going to perform at their normal rate, they're slower. I think this is all being done because the providers just don't want to provide anymore. I think a lot of this is deliberate. Too many broken machines not fixed, too many new broken machines, too many machines throttled down to slower speeds. And the other thing I discovered about that one where I went into the left side and a Volvo came in and went in the right side, I discovered that if there are two 75-watt chargers side by side, if two cars are using them, they have to share 75 watts, which is ridiculous. And the right side always gets about 2/3 of it, 50 watts, and the left side gets about a third, 25 watts. That's just the way it is. So from now on, if ever I have to use these things again, I'm pretty well sure that I won't be. I'll be flying down next time. But if ever I have to use them, I'm jumping in the right side first. Let the next person come along and take the slower one. The end result is the trip was a nightmare just because of the charging situation. The infrastructure is worse. 4 months or so after I've tried it the first time, it has gotten worse. The jumps and hoops that you have to go through to try to keep your car going on long trips is just not worth it. And the whole thing's a dog's breakfast. Now, it's a shame because I like long distance driving, and as far as the car goes, it's a really nice car for distance driving. It really is. Comfortable, it has all the amenities that you need, it drives well. You can't fault it except for the fact that it only does about 320 kilometres of range and takes well over an hour every time to charge up. And as I said, you're really doing 2 hours driving, 1 hour charging on average. And you either eat yourself to death or you just look around at the sky and twiddle your thumbs and wonder what you're going to do in these locations, and sometimes unsafe locations. They're either unsafe or boring. Oh well, I'll leave it at that. Be nice to hear some comments from all you zealots. Try to justify how this is a good thing. I know I've heard the stories, you need the brakes. No, you don't. You don't need all those brakes, and I don't need all that food. But give it a try. I'll leave it at that. As I said, next year I'll be flying down if I go at all. But any distance now, I will fly until such time as I may become a grey nomad and drive a diesel truck that pulls a caravan. That's all from me. Bye for now. Stay safe.